church, family, theology, news, entertainment, evangelism. If it's Christian, then we're talking about it. This is the Mike Charleston Podcast.
Hey everyone, this is a Monday, and that means it is time for another episode of the Mike Charleston Podcast. And I am here with my lovely wife, Sarah.
Hello, everyone.
And Larry is on hiatus still, so it's just us two. This is actually part 2. So this would really help out this episode if you go back and listen to the previous one and then kind of pick up this. This is going to be a 3 or 4 part series that we're working on here. And so if you haven't listened to the other one, please go back. You don't have to. I mean, we're going to be talking about homeschooling, and it's a standalone episode, I'm sure, but it would make a little bit more sense if we go back and talk about what we talked about before that, which was godly culture. But anyway, before we get into talking about homeschooling and all that, we're going to talk about a little bit about what happened to us this week. And it was an interesting week this week.
Fun stuff.
Yes. It's fun for you, right?
I think everybody enjoyed it.
Everybody did. It was fine. I'm not much of a concert goer. I don't like, I haven't been to many concerts, honestly. I've never been to a concert at a stadium. So I've never done any
big concerts.
Yeah, no real big concert. I grew up in church, so we had some concerts at our church. And I vaguely remember, and I remember Aaron Jeffrey coming to our church because we prayed for him. And I remember DC Talk coming to our church before they were anything.
Wow.
Like they were nothing at that point. Like we never even heard of them. And it's so bad that I don't even remember that someone had to tell us that DC Talk came to our church. And I was like, that was that concert that I went to?
Wow.
So other than that,
so was this the first one you paid for?
That's a good question. That might be the first concert that I've ever paid for. Because then the other one, we had a Matthew West, or no, what was...
East to West?
No, who was the one at my Bible college?
Oh, Michael O'Brien.
Michael O'Brien.
The one who danced.
Yes. I went. He started playing a song I didn't know. It was free. It was at our college. And so I got out of my dorm, went over there. It was pathetic. Sorry, Michael O'Brien, but you're just not my thing. And he started dancing on the stage, and it was ridiculous. So I said, I'm out. So no, this might be actually the first concert I've ever paid for.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Wow, I've been to lots of concerts. I grew up loving to go to concerts.
Yeah. Well, Carmen being your biggest one,
that
right?
was the biggest, yeah.
So yeah, we're not really big CCM people. We don't really listen to a lot of CCM music, contemporary Christian music, for those who don't know what CCM is. Growing up, CCM to me was hockey equipment, CCM.
Oh, the brand, yeah.
You're right. But so contemporary Christian music, we listen to, the music that we listen to at home is mainly praise and worship music. So that doesn't cover, that's a lot of different things, a lot of different artists. It crosses over to the contemporary Christian music. They actually sing a lot of praise and worship songs nowadays. Well, anyways, this one was Stephen Curtis Chapman. Yeah, and he's actually an artist that I'm all right with. He has a lot of good songs. He's written a lot of just good songs. That's what I was telling the kids, that what we miss these days is actually just good songs. Not every song has to be a praise and worship song, even though I love praise and worship music. Yeah. Whatever happened to just good old songs? I remember Michael Card, he would write a good song.
Yeah.
You know, they had actually good stories. Don Francisco and Keith Green obviously wrote stories, more like folk Christian music. But no one just really wrote just good, just solid music that was with a storyline that was actually still worshiping God, in a way. And Stephen Curtis Chapman, I think, actually has that. He does that pretty well.
Yeah, well, after 35 years, you would think he would have a few.
Yeah. But I'm not a huge fan of his either, so I don't know all of his stuff. But when I hear it, I'll be like, okay, I recognize that song.
Yeah.
So it was, everyone likes singing, and this is what annoys me about concerts, though, is like, I came to hear him sing. I didn't come to hear everybody else around me sing.
Yeah, and they step back and let the crowd sing it.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, they're terrible. They can't sing in your key for one, and
Right.
but anyway, it was fine.
Well, I understood now why many songs have the la la, and
Yeah.
because when you want the crowd to join in, and so I don't know the words to all the songs, but I can sing la la.
Well, let's be fair. This is the biggest artist I've ever seen live,
Yeah.
and not talking about weight wise, but he's huge. Everyone knows Stephen
Right.
Curtis Chapman,
Right.
and he knows how to work a crowd. And so was the guy who opened up for him. Now, this is a funny story because you are totally unaware. This guy was Mac Powell, and you actually right before the concert found a song, "River of Life" or something like that.
Yeah, and I sent it to Rebecca. I was like, "You got to hear
Check out
the
the
song.
song. It's by a guy named Mac Powell.
I said he sounds just like Third
Third Day. Because he is Third Day. He was the lead singer of Third Day. Third Day, the band, is still going a different direction, but they have a different lead singer. But Mac Powell's on his own, still writing music. Anyway, he knows how to work a crowd too.
Yeah.
And it was fun. He sang some of these old songs. It was just him and a guitar. And like you said, it was amazing how much music could come out of 3 instruments.
Right.
Because when Stephen Curtis Chapman got up there, it was him on an acoustic guitar, and they had a guy on an upright bass, and sometimes he would switch to
Cello.
the cello,
Right.
and then the other guy played mandolin and or
Violin, piano.
right.
It'd
But there was
switch
only
around.
3 guys up there, and they were very good. Stephen Curtis Chapman, whether you like his music or not, he's a very talented guitarist. Like he knows his guitar, and he can play very well.
Yeah.
And but you love that.
Yeah.
You
I
love
did.
concerts.
I loved it.
We're
I thought
looking
it was
forward to your
wonderful.
next one, huh?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever. You like it, so I'll go. The kids seem to like it. They don't know how to act at concerts, though.
I think they did. Well, of course, I was sitting next to you, and the kids were all down the row, so I'm not sure what they were doing. I don't know. I was enjoying myself.
Right. We didn't really go to concerts growing up too much, so they're just standing there, and I'm like, you're supposed to get into it a little bit,
Well, did they put their arms around each other when they told you to?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, that was probably a little awkward for them. Like, what do we do?
Yeah, it was a little awkward. He sang his famous song,
I will be here.
I Will Be Here.
Yeah.
And in the middle of it, he's like, put your arm around someone you love and just tell them you love them.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's no problem for me. And so I tried to reach over, and Hannah and Rebecca were sitting close by, and I put my arm around them a little bit, but everyone else, they didn't feel loved. But anyway, it was fun.
It was fun.
And the other thing that we're doing, we're getting ready to go to the Bible Bee. The Bible Bee is very interesting. If you're not doing the Bible Bee, it's something you should look into. It's a interesting organization. I thought it was kind of cheesy at first, like, oh, come on, the Bible Bee. But actually going through it, our kids know the Bible so well because they've been doing this the last few years.
Yeah.
And this year, Lydia and Elizabeth have been doing a lot of work. They've memorized about 1,000 verses.
Yeah.
1,000 verses. And not only that, they have to know the book of Acts like the back of their hand,
Right.
which is not part of their, some of them are part of their memory verses, but you just have
Yeah.
to know, you have to know Greek words, you have to know cities, you have to know history, you have to know
All the background, cross references. So anything that
Sure.
could be a cross reference that was quoted where.
Exactly.
When
It's a
was that
lot of work.
written?
It's like going to Bible college. Seriously.
Yeah.
It was probably better than Bible college, to be honest.
Yeah.
They really, like Elizabeth said, what did Elizabeth say? She said that she knows how to study now,
Right.
which is great now that we're going to be talking about homeschooling, and now she knows how to study.
Well, it's been a work in progress, maybe, but this really helped.
No, it does. And it disciplines you. It shows you when you're studying the Bible, how to study the Bible. And it's been a big help for them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. If you don't know what the Bible Bee is, to look up the Bible Bee. I don't know what the website is.
BibleBee.org.
BibleBee.org.
Yeah.
It's an interesting little thing. But so anyway, that's what's been going on in our life. And like I said, this episode is kind of connected with the previous episode, which was godly culture, and we are going to be talking about homeschooling today. Now I know not everybody out there homeschools, and we're going to make a good argument for why you should homeschool, and it's probably not what you think, but we're going to tell you what has worked for us and our family and kind of our journey in homeschooling. We are not part of a lot of organizations. We're not even part of our local chapter here, and most people in Baton Rouge probably don't even know who I am.
Probably
But
not.
I'm more known outside of my city than I am inside my city. That is bizarre. But anyway, but we're going to make an argument for homeschooling, and so stick around and listen to that, because I think this will actually be a blessing. Some people are afraid to homeschool; they don't know how to homeschool. Well, look at us; we're not that bright.
No.
Well, I'm not that bright.
Well, I'm not that bright either.
You were salutatorian in your school.
It was a small class.
It was a very small class. Your class was what?
44 people.
44 people. Let's see. My graduating class was almost 500 people. It was a big class. We had the notoriety, or it was, I don't know what we call it, negative notoriety. We were notorious for, at the time, I don't know if this is the case now, we were the largest class coming in as a freshman class, the largest class at our high school, but we were the smallest class graduating.
Wow.
That's not good, probably.
That isn't good.
I'd like to think that a lot of people moved away.
Right. Transferred to a different school or something.
No, it was just
know.
Because our class didn't do so well. So the fact that I graduated was an accomplishment.
Yeah, good
because we
job.
lost about 100 right there. And so anyway.
Wow.
But anyway, I think that's about it, unless you have anything else you wanted to mention.
No, I think that's good.
No, we had a family, just on a sour note, we had a family that we know. We've met through these camps that we put on in Mississippi. We met throughout the years, and one of their children died, actually today. So, or last night. Last night. And so that was very sad to hear. Got to know him a little bit. Talked to him actually a number of times.
Yeah. I got to talk to him in Ohio for a good while. So
yeah. He was a really good guy. He had some, I don't know what kind of disease he had, but then COVID got him and got a hold of him, and the complications with COVID and with whatever else he was dealing with was just probably too much for him. And it took him down. So I hate to end a segment on a sour note, but no, we're praying for that family. But it was really sad to hear. He was 22 years old, and that's very young. And death is a terrible thing in this world. There's no way to make light of it or anything. It's just it's terrible, and it's sad to see some of our friends going through a hard time. So. No, we're praying for them, and I don't want to mention their names or anything here on the air, but yeah, he did listen to the podcast a couple times. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get out on that, and we'll be back. We got to go pick up our van, so hopefully we'll be back shortly.
You're listening to the Mike Charleston podcast.
All right, we are back. We are literally back. We had to run and quick go get our van, and so we technically needed a break, for sure.
We did.
But, oh, by the way, thank you for all those watching on YouTube. A little shout out on YouTube there. I don't know why you want to watch a YouTube podcast, but I guess if we ever show anything like, hey, if you want to see, look at that, or whatever. But no, we'll put the description on the podcast if you ever want to check us out on YouTube. We do have that link. Once again, I say this, we're not very good at the video stuff yet. Joshua, our son, he loves to get all this stuff organized, so he wanted to put it on YouTube, and I'm like, you know what? Why not? We got future things in the pipeline there that we want to do, where some more just teachings and things like that. Maybe we have a lot of ideas. And a lot of them never happen.
Lots of ideas. Oh,
yeah.
That's what it's like when you're married to a visionary.
Exactly. And how many of them do we do?
Oh, some of them.
Some of them. You got to talk into your mic. She's very nervous about her voice. And then she's nervous about her look. She's like, I don't want the video on me too much. But like, you're fine. You're
It's all
fine.
good.
It's me they have to worry about. Like I said, I have a face for radio. So anyway, all right. So once again, if you have not watched the previous, or watched, I'm looking at the camera. So if
Or
you haven't
listened.
listened to the previous podcast, you may want to go back and check out the previous one, which is
Culture and family.
building a culture and godly culture and family, which I really like that one. I think that one is a really good one to lead into this one specifically. If you just want to listen to the homeschool one, that's fine. But we are going to be talking about homeschooling. and how we ended up on this path. The obvious link is that having a vision for our family and creating a culture on what that would look like. Like what does that look like for our family's culture? Well, that's going to include schooling at some point, right? What are we going to do about that? Are we talking about that open book that we talked about in the previous episode?
Right.
We have that blank book, and in that blank book, we're going to have a bunch of people writing in this book. Yeah. We want to be the main people writing in this book, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So
when they're young, for sure, we wanted it to be the only ones writing.
Right. We're going to control that a little bit more. And we don't really want the government system.
For sure.
The worldly concepts, worldly structures. Now, early on, in theory, they're supposed to be just teaching math, reading, writing.
Innocent.
Yes, spelling, things like that. But then it gets, a little bit more complicated later on.
We start to push worldviews that we don't agree with, that we think are wrong and against what Scripture teaches.
Right. So we saw that as a challenge to our culture that we wanted to grow in our to provide in our household.
Right.
And if we're going to raise godly children, and we're going to go over some of these verses, we decided we're going to have to school them at home. Now, we had no idea what that looked like.
No idea, because I wasn't homeschooled. I knew one family that homeschooled growing up, and they were weird.
Yes, same here. They maybe not as weird as the one you knew, but I only knew one homeschool family, and they had a lot of kids. Right. And they were very talented people. Like, they were very good musicians and athletes and things like that. But they were a little weird socially. But by the end, like when I graduated high school, they were the coolest kids at our church. Wow. So yeah, they weren't the weird ones. They were also pretty worldly kids too. So but anyway, I know nothing about homeschooling at this point. Like, how are we going to educate our kids? And that's what we're going to talk about here, is just at what point was education very important to us?
Right. Well, when you say you started with a vision, I think that's very important for husbands and wives when their kids are little, when they first have their babies and their toddlers, to sit down and really talk about that. What do we want? And especially, for you as the head of the home to come up with what you want your family to be like. Yeah.
So this is a very important distinction right here, that a husband and wife need to be on the same page.
Yeah.
And that's obvious. I think that goes without saying, but I said it. So a husband and wife. Now, in a perfect world, we have the husband doing what he's supposed to do and the wife doing what she's supposed to do. As we know, that doesn't always work out as it's supposed to. Husbands can get disinterested. They defer and let their wife kind of take over the home, because they will if you let them, and they will, because they like to fill a void. It's our responsibility as men, as husbands, to direct and to lead the family, which means they are in charge of homeschooling. Now, practically speaking, the wife is going to be doing most of the homeschooling, the actual schooling part.
The work of it, yes.
Sure, because they're going to be home most of the time. But that doesn't mean that the husband is out of this. He for me, I was like a visionary. I still am, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I come up with these great plans, these great ideas. And to be honest, our homeschooling was not a great plan or a great thing. It was very simple. Yeah. It was very simplistic. And we're going to actually talk about that right now, I guess, right? Oh, and actually, we'll get into that in just a little bit. But so what do you have here, babe? You have, starts with having a vision. You just talked about that.
Right. So, just basically, what do you want your home to be like? What do you want your kids to be like? Do you want them to be cool? Do you want them to fit in? Do you want them to be, super, super intellectual, where they can, end up going to Harvard or Yale or something? Or what are your goals for your family? What do you want your family to look like?
And how are you going to get to those goals?
Right.
So most of the time, the homeschool movement, since we've been in this for 21 years, and that's a long time. Ever since Abigail was born, that's when we started. They said, when did you start homeschooling? When she was born.
Yep.
And so, but we started homeschooling around then. And so to be honest, we didn't really know what we were doing. Like we said, we're just trying to figure this out. So trying to get our vision for what we wanted to do. And it was like, okay, education, is that important? Most people, so what I was saying, it has churned in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
The homeschooling, when we first joined the homeschool movement, the people that we knew that were homeschooling, they did it for one reason, and that was to get their kids out of the government system.
Right.
Which is kind of fear-based a little bit, but I understood that's kind of what we were like. We're not going to be a part of that system. We're going to do it God's way.
Yeah.
That's the way we were motivated. We wanted to do what God wanted. But I've noticed that it's changed to where the ladies are taking over, and that you go to the conferences, ladies are speaking, and not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's driven completely towards education.
Right.
Like, we got to prove that our way is better.
Right.
Now, let me say something. I don't care if my way is better. My reason for homeschooling was because I believed it was what God wanted us to do. It had the world system, the education system, the scores, the test scores, whether they're smart, that could all go pound sand. I couldn't care less. I really could not care any less about whether my kids were going to be smart. I knew they were going to be all right. I knew they were going to be fine. Right. I mean, just sit there and go over some basic things. They were going to be fine. But that was not what I was more concerned about. I wanted their hearts. I didn't want necessarily algebra and geometry and chemistry in their heads, even though I knew that was going to come up one day. But I wanted their hearts. And so the other thing here is, as you're coming up with your vision, like, what is the sacrifices that are necessary? You know, the Bible says in Luke somewhere
consider the cost.
Yeah, consider the cost of building a tower, right?
Right.
Now, we're taking that verse out of context, but if you're really going to homeschool, you have to realize, first and foremost, part of the vision is the women's situation here.
Right.
What do I mean by that?
You mean that it's going to look a little different. My future, when we have kids and we're looking at the next 20 years of raising them, and compared to what the world has, where I go out and I get a job, I work my way up in whatever business I'm in, and I make a lot of money. We have 2 incomes. So
which is really nice, right?
It is nice. We can do a lot more if we had double the money, but
absolutely double. You'd make more than me, right?
Okay, well, whatever I would make, it would at least be nice to have extra money coming in, and we decided it's not worth it.
Well, we decided early on, money is no object.
it's not an option, right?
It's not an option. Like, we don't care about money. Money was not an issue to homeschooling or to our plan at all. It's like we would do anything to implement whatever God wanted us to do. Money we're living in the inner city. We're living in the ghetto. When we first got married, money really wasn't an issue. We were making $8 an hour when Rebecca was born. That was what I was bringing in, $8 an hour. I know it was Jeremiah was like, well, that was like 20 years ago. I'm like, $8 an hour was still
pretty tight.
20 years ago, $8 an hour was what? Like equivalent to 11. I think we figured it out, something around 11.
Something like that.
Today, still not a lot. We really had to not only sacrifice cutting things back, but we had to realize, is God's way more important than the world's way? Right. God's way in the family, and this is a whole nother issue, and maybe we'll get into it later in another podcast. But the woman and man, believe it or not, God had a purpose for women and men, and it's different.
Oh, really?
Right. And they come together and they make one. We are one, and we have different roles. I know that is not a very popular thing in our culture.
For sure.
But the culture today has women going out into the workforce, and it's causing all kinds of problems. And right now, I'm like, people are getting upset, and that's just too bad. That's the way it is. It's a new concept for the women to go out into the workforce. And I'm not necessarily saying it's a terrible thing that a woman that can do a job, I think she should get paid the same. If she's doing the same job as a man, I think she should get paid.
Right.
My question is, should she be in that position? Yeah. God created her for a very specific purpose, a woman, and a mother specifically. I think being a mother is the most important job in this world. That is the most important thing in this world, is being a mom. Mothers don't appreciate that, I don't think. They don't embrace that role of being a mom.
Wow.
You don't want to talk about that?
Well, it sounds kind of surprising that you would say mothers wouldn't want to hear that, because of course everybody wants to hear that what you're doing is the most important thing. But
well,
I guess
they would want to hear that, but they don't want to do that. They'd rather do their career. They want to do what men do and be like, well, I'm just as good as a man. I'm like, go back to Scripture, what Scripture says, and let's go focus on that. As a woman is a keeper at home, and to raising children and being what is the word I'm looking for? Yeah, you're not helping me.
Not sure what word you're
nurturer,
okay.
and just someone who is like, and I know that's very broad, but we're talking about what Bible teaches here, that women aren't supposed to be going out and being in control of things and ruling and reigning. This is unfortunately, I know this sounds like a chauvinistic saying, but guys are supposed to be in charge in their home, not the ladies. Ladies help with that. Right. And in that process, God has a certain way of wanting to do these things, and it actually works out pretty well, believe it or not. Yeah. And so
you're just talking about how women feel like it's less like, oh, I'm just a mom. That's all I do. Whereas we feel like if I want to do something great, I'm going to go out and make something.
Right, and that's a bad attitude, I think, because just a mom is terrible. Right. Like, being a mom is more important than being a CEO of Apple. I'm sorry. Apple has done a lot, in our society, and that's great. But I would rather you be a mom than be the CEO of Apple. I don't care how many millions of dollars. Money doesn't matter. The Word of God matters, and how His ways are way better than our ways. Right. And I would rather my kids having mom than money. Right. Any day. Yeah. Having a mom and dad that loves them more than money and material possessions, all that stuff's going to burn away one day. I wish people would finally, understand that and get away from our materialism that America is so pervasive in our society, and we can't get past that. Like we're like, we need to have our money. And we need to be able to do things. And there's no other way to school. We have to have money to be able to school. And we'll talk about that later. Yeah. But the sacrifices, especially for the wife, but it affects the man too. I mean, like you said, the
whole family is going to be different when you decide to homeschool. Everything's going to look different.
And just full disclosure here, and maybe I don't want to tell people this. I don't know. I guess it's going to go out there.
Not sure where you're going.
I have never made more than $60,000 in a year. And yet, we can live on that just fine. Right. We can homeschool the kids, and some people will say, "Wow, how do you do that?" And some people are like, "Wow, that's a lot." But
perspective.
Yeah, exactly, the perspective. But you can still raise a godly family. You can still do this and not make all that much. Now, to me, if you would have said that I was making 50, 60,000 when I first got married, I would have been like, yay. Yeah. Now I'm looking around like, it'd be nice to make a little bit more. In fact, I think Jeremiah is making more than me right now at his pace. He's working a lot of overtime. But anyway, it takes up a lot of personal time. It takes up your social media life. I know that it wasn't around when you were first starting.
Right. Yeah. When our kids were young, I don't know when all that started. Well, I mean, I guess iPhones came out, 2007, 2008, something like that.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, before, when the kids were all little, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have Facebook. We had internet that somehow you could connect to with difficulty, but, I didn't have all the social media. Facebook wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing to always be connected to everybody. So, I could call somebody, but I didn't live my life
we didn't do
on
MySpace.
All that stuff. So
anyway, the social media life how much do you want to be involved there? Income, is that important to you? Your career, is that, if you're a woman out there and you want to be a career woman, that's fine. That is, you might say, well, what do you mean that's fine? Well, you're not married to me and I didn't marry you. I don't care. If that's what you want, then go do that. But what I'm saying is it's going to affect your kids. And I'm telling you that these things, if you want a godly culture, you're going to have to make some sacrifices. I think that's just obvious.
Right.
So here's some of the verses. So we got to tell Joshua, ding, ding, ding. We're going to be doing some verses. He's got to scrub through the whole video so he can put the verses up on the screen. So hopefully we can help you out here. These are some verses that brought us to homeschooling. When we were in Bible college, we had a professor that homeschooled his kids. We really didn't really know much about it. Right. And then it was kind of a debate in our rooms, our dorm rooms. are we going to homeschool? Are you going to homeschool? I'm like, well, yeah, we're going to homeschool. We're all going to be different, right?
Bunch of single people talking about how they're going to raise their kids.
Exactly.
It's kind of funny,
but that's where the idea was kind of birthed. And then when we were engaged, we kind of talked about that. Like, well, you wanted a bunch of kids, and I was like, cool, sure, I'm all right with that. We can practice at least. And so we can have some kids, and we didn't realize we were going to have 7 and 8 years, but we had some kids, and how are we going to school them? And I'm like, I really did not think about that. As a visionary, I didn't really have much of a vision for family at that time. And so we started talking about some of these things. We went to a couple conferences which was kind of interesting. But here are some of the verses. You're the better reader, so why don't you do Deuteronomy 6:4-7? This is the Shema, I think, as they call it.
Mm-hmm. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up.
Yeah, so it seems like right here, these things, God is going to give them the law here, and he is saying, here, these things are so important. This is how it works. Here's the program. Mm-hmm. You get this from me. You teach these things to your children and your children's children and your children's children's children. Right. This is how the program works. I'm not going to keep coming down here every generation. And, this is your responsibility to share it to your kids. And we take this very seriously. Yeah. I mean, when it says, walk by the way, when you sit down, when you rise up, this is an all day thing. Right. You don't just go to a class time, and this is a schooling time. This is our devotion time. So this is our time. We like to compartmentalize things in America.
Pretty much, yeah.
This is our Bible time. This is my pleasure time.
Right.
This is my
schooling
time,
work time, rest time, all those times that we have separated into different categories.
Well, not everybody's American.
Right.
And sometimes it's just your life. What is your life consumed of? Right. And hopefully it's consumed of Christ. And when it's consumed of Christ, you want to do what he wants you to do. Now, sometimes you have to go to work. You do have to go to work. Right. And sometimes you do have to do some schooling things, or sometimes you have to clean house, or sometimes you have to do whatever. But in the process of that, we don't have to this is my spiritual time. Your whole life is spiritual. Make it enjoyable. Enjoy it in the Lord, even if it's math. Right. But any way you go. So anyway, Proverbs 22:6 right here. This is a very famous one. We all know this one.
Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
So the reason we bring up this verse, obviously this is a good training your children verse, right? But it's our job to train. It's not the government's job to train. It's not someone else's job to train. It is our job. He's talking to parents. And I think it's very clear here. Okay, so Ephesians 6:4.
And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord.
So once again, he's talking to fathers.
Yeah.
Right here, fathers. Right. It doesn't say mothers here. This is our responsibility, fathers, to take this seriously. Now here it's talking not to provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Did he say bring them up in algebra and history? Those things are important, but first and foremost, the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Okay, we got John 17:15.
I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world, but that thou shouldest keep them from the evil.
Now, this is where we talked about a little bit of the sheltering, and in the previous episode there, the obviously we can't just take the kids out of the world, right? But we can keep them from as much evil as possible. This world wants your kids. If you don't believe that, you're going to be deceived. This world wants to destroy your kids. The devil wants to get your kids. He wants to twist their minds. He wants them not serving the Lord. He wants them serving themselves, humanism. Yeah. But we want to keep them from that evil. The school system is flooded with evil. It is flooded with evil. Yeah. As we got a fly buzzing around here. I can't get it. It is flooded with evil. And we're going to get into it just a little bit here, but we're not wanting our kids, trust me, the school system, they're not just teaching math and history. No. They're teaching a bunch of other things in there. Right. And we don't want that. So anyway, Proverbs 1:8.
My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother.
Oh, here's both of them, right? So they're like, oh, so you're saying that women shouldn't be teaching? No. Right here. My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. So mother and father. You can say, well, I can send my kids and still do these. You could try, but it works a lot better if you're constantly in their life.
Right.
All right, we got Colossians 2:8.
Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ.
All right, we're taking this verse completely out of context here, just for the sake of this argument. But you go back and look in Colossians. This is still a good verse. Beware lest any man spoil you. Spoil, like take away. Like when you spoil in war, you have the spoils of war. How are they going to spoil you? How are they going to take away from you, your kids, your life, through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after rudiments of the world, the rudiments, and not after Christ?
Right.
Our school system today, they're not teaching Christ.
Nope.
Even if it was a Christian school.
Yeah.
There's still remnants of the world system. The whole system that we know as public education is still fairly new in world history. It is still fairly new. The age segregated, it's a system that works, right? You separate the kids by age and you teach them all the same thing. It's just about getting information in. It's a good way to brainwash a whole society of people.
Right.
It's a great way.
Right. And I mean, I went to Christian school, and so we also had Bible class. And of course, in our textbooks, we wouldn't have evolution. We wouldn't have some, the actual material was decent material, but you're right. The system was still flawed, and the system was still, everybody has to do the same thing, same time, and, just get them through like cattle.
Right. So the next verse here, this is a little longer. It's Psalm 78, 5-8.
For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children, that they might set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments, and might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that set not their heart aright, and whose spirit was not steadfast with God.
Okay, so once again, this is a complicated,
Right.
not going to get into all of it, but the whole point here is that teach your children these things. Teach your children and the children.
Next generation.
This is the program, right? How God wants it to work is that it is responsible, the husband and wife, the family is where these things are taught.
Right.
Not in a system, not in a school, not even in the church, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It is the family unit first and foremost. The father and mother teach these things to their kids. This is the way. I know that sounds like the Mandalorian, right? But this is the way. This is the way that these things get passed on. I got this taught from me by my dad. I'm going to bring these and teach them to my children, and he teaches them to his kids, and so on and so forth. Yeah. This is how it works. This is how God wants it done. And so I think this is a very good argument for schooling your kids at home.
Right.
All right, we're going to skip that one. How about we go to Proverbs 4, 1-2.
Hear ye, children, the instruction of a father, and attend to know understanding, for I give you good doctrine, forsake ye not my law. Okay,
once again, this is the father's responsibility.
Right.
This is pretty straightforward. We'll go ahead and go on to 1 Corinthians 3:19.
For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God, for it is written, he taketh the wise in their own craftiness.
Yeah, so here's what God thinks about the world's wisdom is foolishness. That's what he thinks.
Right.
So all those people put in their trust in the education system, it's foolishness in God's eyes. Now, that doesn't mean we can't still do some of that stuff. Doing the math, the English, the history, science, it's still maybe good information. But let's remember, at the end of the day, it is foolishness to God. And if that's what we're focusing on, we're putting education ahead of God, we failed. We have failed.
Yeah.
It is not important that they know history. They don't have to know the War of 1812. They don't know how to spell. That's all right. We feel guilty sometimes our kids don't know how to spell or something like that. And it's fine. If they know Christ and him crucified, then we've succeeded.
Yeah.
And if they can love the Lord with all their heart, mind, and strength, and they can pass that on to their kids, then we've succeeded. So what if they know the Pythagorean theorem or whatever it's called. The
Pythagorean theorem.
Pythagorean theorem. I have no idea what that is. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. So I have an idea, but trust me, it's a joke in my house when I try to diagram a sentence or do a math problem.
Do a math problem or diagramming. It's I say, okay, guys, time for some comedy.
Yes. So I am not very well versed in that. So I stay in my lane. I know what I know, and I teach my kids what I know, and we'll go from there. So anyway, Joshua, how are we doing on time? We need a little break right here, I think, and then we'll come back and we'll give kind of the practical sides of homeschooling and try to keep it short.
The Mike Charleston Podcast. The Mike Charleston Podcast.
Hey guys, thank you for listening to the podcast today. If you want to be a part of the show and email or comment on what we've been talking about, go ahead and email us at talk@fellowshipofbelievers.org. That's talk@fellowshipofbelievers.org. Thank you. All right, we are back again, and I like that little riff there. It does sound like me playing guitar, right, babe?
Just like it.
Just like it. Hey, actually, it probably doesn't sound that bad.
Yeah, that's about.
I've been playing guitar for, 23 years, something like that.
At least.
And I'm not that great, still.
I would love to be able to play like you do.
Well, yeah. Anyway, we are back. We're talking about homeschooling, and we kind of gave you some of the Bible verses which led us to the homeschooling, and we were talking about in the previous podcast kind of the godly culture that we wanted to bring into our house, and then how that was going to present itself.
Right.
And homeschooling was going to be a big part of it. Now, there are plenty of ways to homeschool. Right.
Yeah,
I mean, we're
lots
talking
of
like
options.
Unit studies, Charlotte Mason, Montessori. You can go down the list of classic conversations, which we don't talk about in our household. The funny thing is, the one that we do, we didn't even know we were doing.
Right. Yeah.
Until about 10 years later, right?
Right. Because people would consider us as unschoolers, but we didn't know that was a thing. So
unschooling, that sounds weird. That just means not following any particular method or curriculum. We would just kind of wing it.
Yeah.
We just let life happen, and we'll get into that in just a second. But originally, when we sat down, so we didn't want to bring, our goal was not to bring the classroom into the house. Right.
You said you're a mom, not a teacher. And I wasn't a teacher, so I was kind of relieved.
Right. It's like, okay, we saw what was in the school, and like the temptation is to, and this was kind of easy for us because we were house church people too. And the temptation with house church is to bring church into the house. And we were like, no. I think the whole concept, and if you don't know what we're talking about, go back to the very beginning of our podcast and you can listen to all those. But the going to bringing the school system, which I think is dead. It's not a very good way of educating, for one.
Right.
It leaves people behind. It doesn't treat them as humans. These are our children. They're humans, and some of them learn very quickly. Some learn a certain way. We want to do all kinds of different ways to engage their minds.
Right.
And I think we did a pretty good job of that.
So no school desks, no ringing the bell, no Pledge of Allegiance.
Recess. Oh, we had plenty of recess. No school lunch. So no, we didn't have any.
We did feed our kids.
We did have a parent teacher conference many times.
That's true.
We had to talk to ourselves. No, but anyway, so what were our goals? We had a couple of main goals, that I had. Like I said, I'm a visionary at heart, right?
Big picture guy.
So I have this big picture of what homeschooling was going to look like, and I scheduled out your day for you, and this is the program we're going to do. Is that what I did?
Scheduling my day?
Yeah, no,
not so much.
I don't even schedule my day. I'm a big picture guy. I don't get caught up in the details. But no, so my main goal, first and foremost, was I want our kids to know God.
Right.
I want them to know who Jesus Christ is. I want them to at least have the knowledge. I can't make them become Christians. Right. I think a lot of homeschoolers fail right there. They think that they can give them enough information, they can just pound Jesus into them, and they'll be Christians because they have information.
Yeah.
Information is good.
Yeah.
You cannot be saved without knowledge of Christ, right?
Right.
You need the knowledge of Christ. but information alone does not save. You still need Jesus Christ.
Right. And that knowledge of him and who he is and the whole story of redemption and everything was the first thing that you thought was most important. So
Right.
That's
right.
what you
that
wanted
was
us to
that
learn.
was the most important. The second one is I said, look, babe, all I really want in my education is it's a little bit broader than this, but
Right.
I wanted my kids to learn to read. That was it. Like just read. And you're like, well, that's it. I said, because if they can read, then we can give them the gift of learning. If they have the gift of learning, then they can teach themselves, basically.
Right.
Do you truly know how to learn?
That's kind of it, really.
Pretty much.
In a nutshell, I don't think people really do know how to learn. When I was in Bible college, we got a lot of information and we just regurgitated the information. The information comes in, information goes out. But did I actually learn anything?
Right. Yeah.
And the one class that was actually learned, they didn't care about a grade. They were going to give us the answers. They said, I want you to learn. I want you to think. And it's like, whoa, new concept here.
Right.
But what are we concerned about? What did we say?
We wanted them.
We just said, what's on the tests, right?
Oh, okay.
Just give me
Right.
what's on the test. I'm concerned about my grade so we can
Right.
move on to the next thing.
Pretty much. And I mean, I was an A student and I don't remember much of, a couple weeks after the test and you could quiz me on it. I'm like, I don't remember. I mean, I already passed the test, so I'm done.
Right.
And
So we wanted to give them the gift of learning. We wanted them, look, if you can read, you can teach yourself. And they love to read. That
Right.
was the main thing.
Yeah.
Now, here in this next section here, you basically are going to take over here because you did most of this. Now, when I would come home from work, I would read books to the kids.
Right.
We would read a lot. Our house, we read a lot of books.
For all the books?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
You don't know what that was from Ultimate Gift. Very good movie. But it was funny, that scene. It's not like Americans. Their library, there's no books. So that's why he was like, where's all the books? And they're like, at the people's places, homes, right?
Right.
You go to an American library, there's full of books. Why? Because no one goes anymore. No one
Right.
checks them out.
Yeah.
And so they're full of books and we don't read them. But we would go and get books from the library. But we'll talk about that in just a second, about building your own library.
Right.
So anyway, this is very practical. This is kind of what we did. This is an encouragement because I think we had this a little bit out of order because a lot of people, their complaints are that I can't do it. I'm not smart enough.
Right.
And once again, I'm not saying my wife isn't smart. We're very intelligent people, but
Sure,
grade-wise,
but- right.
we're just not super smart. We're not
Right.
chemists or brain
Right.
surgeons or anything like that. We went to Bible college, for crying out loud. And so anyway, what do you have down here? You have like the younger years, birth through elementary, which
Right.
was the easy years, right?
Yeah.
Anybody can do this. This is
Yeah.
my big complaint is when people say they can't homeschool. And I'm like, from 0 to 5, you can't do this.
Right.
This is the simplest thing you can
And
do.
even 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, what are we talking
Well,
about?
the good news
here?
is homeschooling, you don't have to know everything all at once.
Right.
You can kind of be learning as they are learning too. And there's internet now and there's a lot of helps out
There's a
there.
lot
But
of
anyway,
helps.
go with the younger years. What do you have here?
So for us, the homeschooling, what it looked like was, a lot of play.
A lot of play.
A lot of play.
Let's be honest.
But we would try to have creative play. We even were part of some kind of library thing that we would go and check out, like a skeleton or
Right.
other things that you could use to learn. So you're talking about a toddler. You'd play by building blocks and counting them. So there's, you get some math in there, you get some, different concepts in. So a lot of play. The math that they learned was through life, through cooking, through the things that, again.
Yeah, all this takes time, by the way. You have to be intentional about this.
Right.
Your mind changes. Like how I have this little, which by the way, makes you just what we're talking about. You're bringing your kid in the kitchen with you.
Yeah.
So many people today, they just throw their kids in front of a TV. Just go watch this. Let me go make supper. No,
Yeah.
we would have our kids right there making supper with us.
Yeah.
They would make a mess.
They
And-
would, but that is a good point because I know since they were young, that was always my goal was whatever I'm doing, I want them to do too.
Right,
Like
right.
I didn't want to just separate and I'm going to do this while you guys say, everybody go play in the room so I can
And
do
you would
something.
be surprised how many questions Actually, if you're a parent, kids have questions. So if you're just simple things like doing a recipe or something, and right there's a bunch of fractions, and I'm not very good with fractions, but I know how halves and quarters and thirds work.
Right.
And to see it, it's not that we're against paperwork, but when you see it and you do paperwork and you talk about it, all those concepts kind of make it, they get it.
Right.
They start to get it, and you start, we would count money. Yeah, I'd sit there on the floor and count change with them and be like, okay, this is a penny. To the point that we started becoming coin collectors. Jeremiah
so
became
watch
a
out.
coin. Right. And, but the pennies and nickels and dimes, that's all multiplication, all adding, all fractions even.
Right.
Everyone knows that 20 nickels is $1, so that's 1/20th. That's 5% right there. And so it's, because it's five.
Right.
But, but maybe not everybody knows that. But, I know that's very simple, but this is what we're talking about. It
is simple. And
five.
It should be simple.
This is basic things that we use every single day.
Right.
So anyway, go ahead.
So then, like you had mentioned, reading. Every day we read lots and lots and lots of books.
To the point you memorized almost all the books.
Yeah, I did memorize many of them, and the kids memorized many of them. And they would, Abigail would sit there and read something to Rebecca, but she had no idea how to read, but she could go through the whole book because we'd read it so many times. So
she memorized the book. So it was hard for us to know
really
if
know when they learned to read.
Right.
Because I'm like,
are they reading or are they just memorizing?
Right.
But which helped out in the Bible be later on.
Sure. So reading, school, in quotes, was just for fun. Like I would print out workbook pages, printables, whatever, sometimes I'd find things, but there wasn't a specific time during the day. It was just, hey, I found this workbook at a thrift store and let's look at this page. And
yeah, you can kind of tell when they're kind of getting irritable kids can't just do something for 8 hours,
Right.
So they're playing with something. Okay, let's try something different. How about you sit up here and do some of these things? Now, when it came to printables or worksheets or things like that, every kid is going to be different. Like our oldest loved worksheets. Just give her worksheets and she would just do all these math worksheets. I can't stand worksheets. And most of our kids don't like worksheets.
Right.
But some of them do. Lydia is probably one that likes worksheets.
She probably would.
Yeah, she probably does. We don't really do worksheets too much anymore.
No.
Most of them are grown.
But what you would really count as school was really just for fun. And that it wasn't, through the elementary years, there was no stress of like, I have a test on Friday. What am I going to do?
It was just pure fun. So you get what we're trying to say. Their idea of learning, we were making it fun. This is a fun activity.
Right.
Learning is interesting. It's fun. It's exciting. It's not boring. It's not, do we have to sit down and do our learning time? Like, no, this is life. You are just starting on life is happening here. You're 3 years old. The whole world is, to be explored.
Right.
And so they are curious as any, they're the most curious right there. From 0 to 5 and toddlers are so curious. Feed that.
Yeah.
Don't make it tough on them and boring by giving them sheet work and worksheets and just let them enjoy different things here for fun. This is people may not like this, but this is what we did.
Then the library we would go to usually once a week, and when we went to the library, that was like, I think that the library here has a limit of 50 books per kid. So we would come home with hundreds of books.
And it was fun always watching them come back. They would have their backpacks and to get their books out and immediately sit there and start reading. I think some of the kids have their own specific places. Yeah. I remember Hannah would just sit there. We had a library bookshelf. It was actually called the library bookshelf. All of our library books would go on this bookshelf, and she would just sit right in front of her and Hannah and Rebecca. Sit there and just read.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not comfortable.
Yeah.
Just sit on the couch.
But even to this day, I know at least some of the younger ones still are like, when can we go back to the library?
Right.
So,
right.
I love it.
But now, the library, we know people don't like the library. We have some friends of ours that just are really anti-library and the social aspect of what the library is. And I get it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ungodliness in the library, which goes to our other point here that it's some sacrifices. We built our library. If you come to our house is full of books. Yeah. We've got books downstairs. We've got books upstairs. We got books in our library. We have books all over. These are books that we liked. or most of them, and that we thought were very good books. And so at any moment they can just read these books.
Yeah.
And so we created our own library. I know that's not, once again, I didn't make all that much money, and we had to wait for deals. We had to wait for certain things at times, but this is very possible to do. You can pick up books, and very good books too, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So also just letting the kids, going outside with them, exploring. I mean, what kid doesn't want to go outside and like look at the tree and like, oh, why is this peeling off? And they're interested, they're curious. So then we would take that and try to go off of that and learn something. So, and that's even, that's like the caterpillars that we had.
Yeah, with the poor caterpillars. We were infested by caterpillars one year outside, and kids want to know what in the world. And I'm like, I don't know. So we went to the library, got all kinds of books on caterpillars, and found out they were tent caterpillars. And they weren't the stinging caterpillars, thank goodness, but they were the tent caterpillars. So we went to the Home Depot, where we bought a
big plastic bin.
Right. And with a top on it, and we filled it with dirt, and we put the caterpillars in there, and we killed them all, pretty much. But it was everybody remembers that. But we just kind of experienced. I think a couple of them actually cocooned and made moths and whatever. But they were curious about that. So hey, well, let's go get some books about it. It wasn't like as part of our agenda. It was just like, hey, this is what's happened in life. Let's learn about it.
Right.
And it's like one day we're out counting how many trees are in our yard, look at the leaves. Well, let's go study those trees. Let's go. Right. It wasn't just like a project that we're like, well, we're curious about this. Let's do it. Keep that curiosity going and wanting to learn. So many of us, we just go to college and we stop learning.
Yeah.
And we want to move on with our life, but God is so big, and the wonder, that is the one thing I love about God, is like the wonder of it all it really hits me. Like God is so big. There's so much to know. There's so much out there. We will never figure him out. He is inscrutable. And we can't search him out completely. Right. And he has made this universe, and it is fun to figure it out. Now we'll never figure it out completely, but it is amazing that the things that we can learn, and our kids are way smarter than we are now. So
yeah, pretty much.
they figured these things out. They love figuring these things out.
So then the other thing was work learning, cooking, cleaning, home repair, things like that. As soon as they can walk, there's stuff going, they're helping in the kitchen, they're helping to whatever. Which was
pretty easy for us, because we've pretty much lived in a home that has always been under construction.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, we've bought fixer-uppers our whole life, except for our first home and a rental. But after that, it's just been fixer-uppers. Of course, it's only been 2 homes.
Yeah, but a lot of years, and always more projects that need to happen. So, and it's not necessarily something we schedule out, but it's a lot that goes on. So the kids learn how to drywall. They learn how to do air conditioning work. They learn how to do lawnmower repair, because we need the lawnmower to work. Yep, just whatever it is, painting and
sometimes money can be a curse, because we didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
And so we had to figure out something. I wasn't going to go buy a new lawnmower.
Right.
And so you would go pick up 5 broken lawnmowers, and they would take apart the engines, and they would figure them out, and they can put them back together again until we get rid of them all again, because no more broken lawnmowers.
Well, it's also good to teach them to clean and to get rid of junk. So, hey, there's that too. Yes. So that's kind of pretty much
that's the younger years.
How we homeschooled during the younger years.
Which was very, very easy. Let's be honest. That was the easy part.
And like all those things that we said, it wasn't like we had a plan. It was like, okay, this week, I'm going to do cooking with this. I just kind of lived life. And as we lived, you just kind of teach them as you go, kind of like when you walk by the way, when you sit down, just throughout whatever we're doing, they're learning.
Right. So. Absolutely. And so from middle school through high school, this is where it gets, this is probably where people are like, okay, well, let's see what you guys did here, right?
Yeah, well, so we did.
Not much.
Yeah, not a whole lot, but we did pick up real math books. Somebody gave us some Saxon math books, and I was like, oh, okay, sure, we'll try it out. And so I did, and they did fine with that. So I bought more for the,
we also used
years
some
to come.
Internet after a while. We'd use that.
I've used Khan Academy, for some things here and there. And we got some Apology of Science books, and that's really because I felt like after going to the library and reading so many books, science books, they would just get tons of stuff. And
yeah, we want to talk about that for a second, though. We weren't afraid to tackle some of those issues. Like, we got some science books from the public library, and yes, full of evolution.
right.
We didn't shy away from it. We talked about evolution, and we would show them the fallacies and show them the illogicalness of evolution,
right.
and other issues that would come up.
Right.
Now, we're not scientists, but eventually we got other curriculum that really didn't have it in there. And so we weren't afraid of showing our kids some of the bad teaching out there. We just had to be prepared ourselves, which means we had to be read up on the issues and know some of the issues. But anyway, so apology of math, apology of science.
Right. And then more work learning, bigger projects, more things to do around the house. So
yeah, to the point where we would let Jeremiah, like we said last week, when he was about 8 to 10 or something like that, he wired our house, and he knew, we trusted him because he knew what he was doing.
When we would go on all those trips to the library, I would usually try to let them pick what they wanted, and he would get like electrical coding books, like, so to keep keep up to date with the latest electrical codes. So I don't know if you remember at our old house, but he had every outlet and every light switch. He would mark on there, like, this one has no ground wire. This one has whatever.
It got annoying. Yes.
So our house is not up to code, and I'm sure this one isn't either. But,
no, we know, son. Thank you.
But that's what he enjoyed. So I was like, well, I mean, it's not a bad thing to know about. So that's
right. But yes, we had to temper it a little bit. But no, he knew all that stuff. That was funny. Him and Joshua both. They want to go. Their idea of reading the books were
manuals, car manuals.
Yeah. And I'm like, car manuals, guys. He's like, I don't want to read Dick and Jane. It's not a very good story. I'm like, it's not a good story. But it's teaching you words. You can't read these technical books if you don't go through this.
Right.
So they would work through that, but they really wanted the technical books. They wanted to know how engines work. They want to know how to fix things. And hey, I'm not going to shy away from that, but I'm like, you got to learn to read first. But anyway.
So, and then for the most part, I just look online and I see the credits required in Louisiana. So I'm like, all right, you need so many math, so many. Yeah,
but by the way, we're in Louisiana. So every state is going to be different with what they require. So check with your local state.
And since we are in Louisiana, it's very loose. All I do is once a year, I go online and I say the number.
Schooling.
That's it. They don't ask me how many days, what I do. I mean, so it's for here, we could do that. Obviously, people that live in other states may have to do things differently. And
all right, we got a few more minutes here, babe.
Okay.
Some objections to homeschooling. Now, these really irk us, right? I don't like these objections, but we'll go through it. We have 3 here.
Right.
One is, I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. Wife has to work because we need more money. I think we covered some of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can do this. They come slowly. You don't have to learn everything all at once. You're not teaching them chemistry or algebra 3-4 when they're 4, at least.
And there's a lot of help out there. So
absolutely.
I mean,
if you really need help, you can get some help.
Yeah.
But it can seem overwhelming. People are like, I just can't imagine teaching my kids.
Right.
Well, if you have the right motivations into it and just realize that you do this anyways with other aspects of life, you teach them. People who send their kids to public school, they're still teaching their kids something.
Right.
So just imagine teaching them more.
Yeah.
But they're not smart enough. If you're not smart enough, then just give them the books. I'm not that smart. Some like all the things that Jeremiah and Joshua can do, I don't know how to do. But they taught themselves.
Right.
Give them the gift of learning that you may not be able to. I'm reminded about the Ben Carson story.
Yeah.
He's a genius. Like, he's a brain surgeon and just brilliant. Right. If you don't know his story, it's very fascinating. His mom was dumb. Like, I should clarify. She's not dumb.
She was uneducated.
Right. She couldn't read.
Right.
But she sent her kids to the library to get books,
right.
kind of like what we did, and their kids got into reading, and they are brilliant kids because they educated themselves. They had a desire to learn. Anyway, that's gifted hands. It's a great story. Number 2, kids won't be college ready. College? Yeah, okay, yeah. So they won't be college ready. I've heard this one. Like, what are they going to do when they get to college?
Right.
Well, so far, nothing. None of our kids are going to college. We aren't pushing them one way or the other.
Right, but I would say if I had a kid that I really thought was probably destined to go to college, like they wanted to be a doctor or something,
sure,
I don't think that's out of reach either. Obviously, I would need some help to get them,
Right.
better prepared for that. But
there's helps for sure. And I don't know if they've taken the PSAT test or anything like that, but we weren't really test people at all. But we thought Jeremiah might want to be an engineer because he definitely had an engineer mind.
Yeah.
And he really didn't show any interest in wanting to go to school for that. He has other interests, and which is fine. It's just, I'm not going to push them one way. You have to go to school. I want them to know how to earn money, how to work, how to do these things, to be responsible. He's going to raise a family one day, and I want him to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And going to college doesn't guarantee you anything. And besides, it's a godless place. People are like, well, it's not just the education they get, it's the environment. And I'm like, that's exactly what I'm trying to keep them away from.
Exactly.
It's a terrible environment, especially if you have some of these big universities. And I know there's some smaller universities that really focus on the actual education for their particular thing. But if you can find one locally that you can stay at home, you don't have to live in the dorms, and they can just get the education, whatever, it depends on what you want them, what they want to be.
Right.
But none of our kids showed any interest. One of them actually wanted to go to a Bible college type thing, and that didn't work out 1 year, but they still may. I don't know.
Right.
But anyway, number 3, I don't know if we finished number 2. Kids won't be college ready. Is that?
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, but you feel like we covered that one all right?
Yeah, I think so.
If you want to be college ready, there's ways out there.
Right.
3, kids will miss out. School is more about education. It's also about the experience and social life, socialization, right?
Right. We don't want
This
our
is the
kids
big
to be
one.
awkward in public and not know how to interact.
Yeah, and our kids probably are a little awkward somewhat. But with their friends, most people that know our kids, they're not very awkward at all.
Right.
Now, we've had to do a little work in that area. And in our community, we have a big homeschool community. Right. And so there are different events that we've gone to with other homeschoolers. And so the kids can see other kids.
Right.
I get that. The kids need friends.
Right.
We get that. And but find a community. If you live way out in the middle of nowhere, that might be a problem, but that might be a problem anyway if you go to school.
Yeah.
So in Louisiana, it's a big homeschool area, and especially in Baton Rouge, there's a good bit of homeschoolers. And so they get together, they have field trips, they have co-ops.
Right.
There are ways that people get together. That's why we have our camps. That's why we do different things.
Yep.
Get involved with your church. The kids will not miss out. What's more important, their social life or godliness? We still want them to have fun and be able to have friends. We have friends, so we want them to have friends. We're not against social life at all.
Right.
But do we really want our kids hanging out with fools? Now, what I mean by that, just a warning to Joshua. Here's some more verses. Proverbs 13:20.
He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed.
Yeah, this is going to sound harsh, but children are fools. They do foolish things.
Well, it says foolishness is bound in the heart of a child.
Right.
So
and you surround them with other fools, they're not surrounded by wise people.
Right.
And you think the teacher is going to show them that the one wise person in the room with all the 25 other kids? I don't think so. They're going to get their counsel with their friends, and that's probably not a good idea.
Right.
1 Corinthians 15:33.
Be not deceived, evil communications corrupt good manners.
Those are just a couple other verses that just kind of explain that. And in Psalm 1, the whole chapter, basically, the blessed man is not...
Walk not in the counsel of the ungodly.
Right. So all these things that... all these verses just point... Just Christianity in itself, it's better for them to be around adults most of the time. I'm not afraid of them being around friends. I like them having friends. They actually have a lot more friends now as they've gotten older and more responsible. But guess what? 18, 19-year-olds can still act foolish. Look at the college campuses. My goodness, they're full of foolishness.
Right.
So anyway, you asked me like a question here: should Christians homeschool?
Yeah.
I said absolutely yes. I don't see how you could, especially in our. Pam hates me saying especially, but especially in our day and age, where look around at our climate. This is a godless country.
Right.
The system is in place. The school systems, the government systems, they don't want God there. They do not want him at all.
Right.
And that is what we want, to raise them up. And so if you can, it is possible. It is easy. It's not that hard. Homeschool your kids.
Right.
It's a sacrifice. I get it. But money's not the most important thing in this world.
Yeah.
Education's...
It's worth the sacrifice.
It is.
So,
I'm glad that you embraced your role as a woman, as a mom, and your role as a mother, and teaching the kids, and didn't care about a career. And you're trying to prove yourself to someone. Like, you took your position seriously, and it shows. I told the girls at work, I was working with one of them, and I said, your mom is brilliant in this. She does this so well. She loves being a mom, and she loves doing what she does. And you guys are the benefit of that. You guys, because she was like, why are we so good? And I'm like, well, it depends on the day. No, I'm just kidding. But I was like, it's a big part of your mom. Your mom plays a huge part in that. Yes, I play a part in that, but really it's you. I mean, you're around them most of the time.
Right. Well, it is beautiful to see that when you do things God's way, even in marriage and in everything in life, when you follow what God has set up for you to do that, it's beautiful. Like,
absolutely.
The result. Great.
So the culture we created was very important to us. It was probably the most important. We wanted to create a culture that was all about Christ.
Right.
And that was important.
Yep.
So first you start with your vision, your plan, and then what do you want your culture to be? What is more important, godliness and love, or book smarts? That you have to determine that. And we decided book smarts weren't that important. So it goes back to our vision. What do you want? And for us, it was definitely worth the sacrifice. Now, next week... we did get most of that in there. I don't know if we're going to talk about at some point the real importance of being a mom. That role is under attack like never before.
Yeah.
Women's liberal movement, the liberation movement, is in full force, and they actually make fun of you. Like they don't want you doing what you're doing, even though they're all for women having their choice. They don't want you to choose what you're doing.
Not this one though.
They want women to conquer the world. And it's very unfortunate because the family is the one that suffers. You look around in our society, the family is suffering, and society is suffering because of that.
Right.
Because women are confused at where they're supposed to be. Are they supposed to be over here? Are they supposed to be over here? And right now they're trying to do everything. They're really honestly trying to do everything while the guy just sits on the couch watching football. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. He goes and does his job and he thinks he's done. And it's really unfair.
Yeah.
But the woman, her job is so important. We may just do a whole episode, as that light just went out, and a whole episode on that. But honestly, next week we're going to be talking about our godly culture and homeschooling. The obvious question is then, what's the difference between legalism and convictions?
Right.
Because that is a very fine line, and we don't want to go into legalism. And a lot of people are like, oh, you homeschoolers, you're just all legalistic and think you're better than everybody else. Not at all. But we want to do what God wants us to do, and we have convictions.
Right.
So before any more lights turn off, I guess we better get out of here, Joshua. But I really do appreciate you listening. I thank you, all the people on YouTube that are checking us out. Please subscribe, by the way. And I don't really know how to do all this. I guess there's a bell you should post a ring to get notifications and things like. Joshua knows all that stuff. He should get on here and tell us. But if you're watching on YouTube, thank you. We try to put some graphics up to make it more exciting because it's just us talking, right? We want to do a podcast. Yeah. And thank you, Sarah, for being on here. I just called you Sarah, not babe.
I know, that's weird.
That's weird. But anyway, that's it. Thank you, Joshua, for being on the board. And why don't we go ahead and get out of here?
You've been listening to the Mike Charleston Podcast.